All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with things. Welcome, everybody. My name is Alexandra Smith, and I am the Communications and Training Specialist here at NC CASA. Throughout the webinar today, I will be here to provide any sort of tech support. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to send me a private message, and I'm always happy to help. You are in the training Essential Knowledge to Address Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children in North Carolina, building a foundation for a statewide response. And I am going to pass it over to Courtney, who will get us started.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and so glad that you are joining us. We really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule and also recognizing the importance of this topic. So we're really excited to share with you this training series, and we're going to learn together as a team, and we'll get started. So I'm going to share just a few things about NC CASA. And while I'm doing that, you all are welcome to drop your name in the chat, share your agency and the area where you are Zooming from, and we'd love to hear from you. So next slide, please. So the North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault is an inclusive statewide alliance working to end sexual violence through education, advocacy, and legislation. NC CASA is a statewide coalition, and we use a social justice framework. Oh, I'm sorry, next slide. Alexandra's advancing the slides for me. So our work is done through a strong intersectional social justice perspective. When we center our work on marginalized communities, then everyone is served. Next slide. And some of the work that we do includes organizing and sponsoring statewide trainings related to sexual violence. We support rape crisis programs. We participate in resource sharing and technical assistance. We do our work with legislative policy, local and national. Anti-human trafficking outreach, training, and technical assistance is my job. We have a wonderful prevention education program that includes training and technical assistance. And we do work on colleges and universities. Next slide. And we want to acknowledge that not all women are victims, not all men are perpetrators, and any gender can be a victim or a perpetrator. Next slide. So I'm seeing all this stuff in the chat. Fun. Thank you for jumping in. We want to acknowledge as we begin that this content is really heavy. And those of us who are doing direct services, who are in the field of sexual violence and other kinds of, around other kinds of trauma, we still want to recognize that the work that we do can cause secondary trauma. And for the survivors among us, we understand too that this content can be difficult. There's just something about child sex trafficking that is particularly overwhelming, and we just want to recognize that. So please do take care of yourselves. If you need to step away, that is fine. We definitely support that. And if you need help locating anyone that support around just some uncomfortable feelings or memories that this might stir up, please do reach out to us and we will connect you with services. So next slide. So I am Courtney Dunkerton. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the anti-human trafficking specialist at NC CASA. I have had this position for about 3 years, almost to the day, I think. Prior to that, I was doing programming and direct services in Alamance County with survivors of human trafficking. So I work with survivors of all ages with so many different backgrounds and experiences, and I carry those stories with me in my heart and into all the work that I do. So we'd like to make some other introductions. Is Robin on the call yet? We're still waiting for, okay. So when she shows up, we'll just make sure she can give a shout out. So let's hear from our Justice U team. Would you introduce yourself, Justice U folks?
Thank you, Courtney. And yes, welcome everyone. My name is Ashley Chapman. I'm a human rights lawyer and founder of Justice U. Super excited today to be launching this brand new training alongside NC CASA and other community partners across the state. We'll be sharing why we're so excited about that soon. But just, I used to live in North Carolina, just fun fact, in Moyock after law school for a while. And so have fond memories, and really excited to just dive in together today to figure out how we can all work on this issue. For me, it's been a lifelong endeavor, a calling since I was a kid, and we took in children in our family who experienced this level of harm in their lives, and I just dedicated my life to it then. It's been 21 years now of working professionally in this field across our country and around the world. So lovely to be with you all today, and I'll hand it over to Jessica Samuel, our Chief Learning Officer.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us today. We're so excited to talk with you about this program. As Ashley said, my name is Jessica Samuel. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Chief Learning Officer with Justice U, which basically just means I've been very involved in the design and development of this training program. My background is in online education and blended learning programs, and so I'm so excited to be able to bring that specialization to a program like this. And really have it work for all of you and all the learners across North Carolina. So I am, a resident geek in all things online learning and technical things like that. So, but also just really passionate about being able to enable change in our communities through education. We're so excited to be able to welcome this community into the program. I think Brittany may be on the line also. Brittany, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Brittany Thomas, and I have been with Justice U for about 3 years. I'm located in Durham, North Carolina, and I worked as a subject matter expert on the CSEC series. My background is in social work in Indiana, New York, and North Carolina. And I've worked in a lot of issues that overlap with trafficking. So working in public health clinics with domestic violence, substance abuse, and other issues that oftentimes we might be encountering trafficking without even knowing it. So I'm really glad to be getting training out into the hands of people who do the kinds of jobs that I used to do, so that they can notice and help identify and respond to trafficking that they see in their own communities.
Great, thank you. And we do have Robin Colbert on the meeting as well, and she will be looking at the chat and answering and responding to any questions that you may have as we move forward. So please do, well, I'll just share that in a little bit. Okay, next slide. So in today's training, you will learn basic information about child sex trafficking in North Carolina. You'll learn about the Essential Knowledge Training Series and how to register. And you will also learn ways the Essential Knowledge Training provides a foundation for a statewide response to the commercial sexual exploitation of children. For any questions, you can write them in the chat as you go along. You can also private chat Robin or others if you want to remain anonymous, and Robin can bring things to my attention that may need to be lifted up publicly. And we'll have a few minutes at the end for questions too, so whatever you're comfortable with. If you private chat me, I may not see it immediately, so just FYI for that. So next slide, please. So in the next few minutes, I will provide the briefest of overviews of child sex trafficking in North Carolina. So this will be more like a snapshot in the definition, some of the types and situations, the response, and challenges that we face. Next slide. So human trafficking is a very, very large, complex subject, okay? So in its essence, when we talk about human trafficking, we're talking about coerced or compelled labor or services. So this kind of labor or services would be in different kinds of industries, including underground industries such as drug and weapons sales and the commercial sex industry. Child sex trafficking is a subset of the entire human trafficking. So when we talk about commercial sex with children, we're talking about a sex act in which something of value is given or exchanged or traded. Child sex trafficking does not require the existence or proof of force, fraud, or coercion. This is the only kind of human trafficking where force, fraud, or coercion does not need to exist, and it does not need to be proven. And this is because children or minors cannot consent to commercial sex. This is not the same thing as consent to sex. It's consent to commercial sex. And that's very important to understand. Next slide. It's still confusing when we start to hear different situations of child trafficking. It can still become confusing. And one reason is having a third-party facilitator or not having one can cause, it just needs some more clarity. So it's important to understand that any commercial sex exchange by a minor is considered sex trafficking, even when there is not a third-party exploiter. So this includes situations of a minor experiencing commercial sexual exploitation by organized traffickers or an abusive romantic interest, caregiver, or family member. It also includes homeless minors who have learned how to survive by trading sex, or any minor who self-initiates and negotiates a commercial sex exchange. These youth can include LGBTQ kids who have left unsafe homes, minors experiencing abuse or neglect at home, or minors engaging in drug-seeking behavior. And youth will have different perspectives about their involvement or about their victimization. Any exchange, again, of sex for anything of value by a minor falls under the legal definition and protections of human trafficking. Existence of proof of force, fraud, or coercion are not required for the definition of sex trafficking for anyone under 18, but are required for the legal definition of labor trafficking of minors. So again, just to reiterate, sex trafficking of minors is the only type of trafficking where force, fraud, or coercion does not need to be proven or exist. So I hope that's clear. If you have questions, please do drop in the chat. We want you to be clear on that definition. So next slide, please. So I want to speak briefly to the different types of trafficking situations, just to give you a little bit of broader understanding. Again, child sex trafficking can involve a third-party exploiter, sometimes known as a pimp, sometimes known as a trafficker, or it can involve no third party, where the child is doing their own exchanges. A trafficker can be a person of any gender who has groomed, that is pretending to be a protector, a parental figure, or a romantic partner, who has groomed and created an emotional or physical dependency and loyalty with a minor. A trafficker can be an organized professional network that involves other kinds of criminal activity where victims experience coerced criminality such as drug sales or recruiting other youth or minors for sex trafficking. Familial trafficking is trafficking by family members or caregivers. These usually involve very young children and can involve infants as well. Research is indicating that possibly 40% of all child sex trafficking cases involve family members. Buyers are referred to sometimes as a John. This is a person who exchanges something of value for sex. And in the case of minors, a buyer is considered a trafficker, according to the legal definition. And ignorance of the child's age is not a defense for the prosecution, and that's due to our safe harbor laws. Child sexual abuse materials are sexual videos and images that are traded or sold. And this is a form of commercial sexual exploitation of children. And this sadly includes children of all ages, including infants. Children can be exploited within juvenile justice and foster care systems. For example, when children are trading sex for favors with staff, or being traded or sold in detention facilities, recruited and groomed in group homes, or traded or trafficked by foster parents. So take a breath, that's horrible content, and it always is every time I present it. Next slide, please. So what are some responses that we find in North Carolina? So Child Protective Services and law enforcement, They enforce the laws around child abuse and neglect. And in North Carolina, adults are mandated reporters. So all suspicion of child abuse, child trafficking, sex trafficking should be reported to these entities. And so they will initiate investigations. CPS will screen in or screen out cases and conduct those investigations. And child advocacy centers are places where all these systems come to the child, where forensic interviews take place, child medical exams, and other advocacy for the child and their family, their caregivers. There's also a multidisciplinary team that works together to create solutions for the best outcome for that child. And it's mostly centered on the investigation and the prosecution of those cases of child abuse and neglect. System-specific protocols such as emergency rooms and schools will have their own response set in place. And of course, those do include reporting to CPS and law enforcement if child abuse, neglect is suspected. There is screening in systems of care and with healthcare professionals where trauma and abuse is screened, and sometimes they screen specifically for child sex trafficking, but there's no uniform practice across North Carolina. But we do know that there are agencies and entities that do practice those things. Next slide, please. I told you this was going to be brief. So the challenges in North Carolina around this, these are some of them. We could add more, but these are some of them. The first is data. There is no uniform data collection in North Carolina on the prevalence of child sex trafficking. We do not know how many children have been trafficked. We certainly understand that it occurs in all rural, urban, and suburban areas in North Carolina, but we do not have solid numbers. Screening, there is no statewide screening practice, no specific practice or screening tool. We've mentioned harms in systems such as juvenile and foster care system, and I wanted to repeat this, but also lift up the fact that this is especially the case for marginalized youth, such as immigrant youth, indigenous, Black, brown girls, whose trauma behavior is punished and criminalized, which further increases their risk of victimization. There is a significant gap in safe shelter for homeless youth and trafficked minors that is appropriate to their care for their well-being and healing, that also does not criminalize and punish their trauma. There is lack of consistent coordination of care across systems and across 100 counties. There is lack of uniform professional and evidence-informed training on CSEC that is specific to North Carolina. So how do we address these challenges? Next slide, please. So to address the problem of child sex trafficking together, we need a starting point. And that starting point needs to be information about the problem. And we all need to have the same information that is not rooted in urban legends or sensationalized or politicized narratives or anecdotal misinformation. We need to all have the same information that is based on evidence, that includes and honors all survivor experiences, not just those experiences that align with our biases. And we all have biases, right? We also need information together that is specific with current North Carolina legislation and policy. So this is why NC CASA chose to collaborate with the Justice U team to provide North Carolina learners with the highest quality training program that is accessible to everyone, and that also has language that's not specific to one discipline. We know jargon can be a problem with accessing training, so we wanted a training that would reach across different disciplines. So we're very excited to share with you this series. So I'm going to hand it off to the Justice U team, and y'all tell us what we need to know about the essential knowledge training.
Thank you so much, Courtney, and couldn't agree more with everything that you just shared. And so we are thrilled today to let you all know that this is now available. And I'm going to walk through kind of an overview of this training and then pass it to Jessica on our team to go through a demo of it so that it's very easy for you to follow these breadcrumbs. But the training itself is called the Essential Knowledge for Addressing Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children in North Carolina. And the goal here, of course, is to equip everyone who is in the state of North Carolina working with children and youth and even young adults who are in a position to recognize and respond to CSEC, which is also commonly referred to as child sex trafficking, if you've heard that term. CSEC is broader. You'll learn why we're using that word in this training and instead of other words to describe it. But here's kind of my point, which is that it is hard for me, having spent the last over 2 decades of my life working in this field, to imagine that there's anyone in a community that has any interaction with any child who does not need this training. So we know that every time that individuals in a position, whether you're in a school setting, whether you're a parent, whether you're a foster parent, whether you're in juvenile justice, if you've got the knowledge that you need about this issue, and especially how it is presenting itself to you in your particular settings, then those identifications soar in communities. And obviously then care needs to be ready, trauma-informed care and so many other things that need to start taking place. But we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to establish some baseline knowledge and shared knowledge across the board. So if we go to the next slide, I'll kind of share with you how this series is built. It's a 3-part series. So you're going to start stacking some knowledge. And that first part is on human trafficking awareness. So on Justice U, you'll first take a human trafficking awareness course. This 1-hour course is going to introduce you to all forms of trafficking all around the world and here in the United States. We consider that baseline knowledge so that you kind of get that really big picture as fast as we can get it to you and as succinctly as we can get it to you. If you are someone who just loves learning like our team does, you're going to have every citation, research, report possible to continue that learning journey. But if you stick with just the online track, it's going to take you about an hour to gain that knowledge and that badge, that digital badge. Then the next step is to go through the second course, where we're going to go from now this big picture down to not really a small one yet, because it's all about commercial sexual exploitation of children in the state of North Carolina. So we're going from global down to North Carolina, from all forms of trafficking down to CSEC, and really trying to provide you some baseline knowledge. And I would consider even really beyond baseline. It's got so much in there about what you need to understand about the why of all of this. What are the indicators? What are the vulnerabilities? And just kind of that baseline knowledge there too. And then the third part is really where we want to make sure you go, because depending upon what hat or hats that you wear in your community, this is going to now kind of where the rubber meets the road moment. So now that you've got your knowledge base built on trafficking, generally speaking, CSEC in North Carolina, now we're going to show you how that knowledge needs to translate to action, depending upon whether you are an educator or school personnel, whether you're a behavioral therapist or healthcare provider, group home professionals or foster parents and associations, juvenile justice professionals and case managers, and any community advocate or organization working with kids in your state. So the reason that we kind of now bifurcate all of these different roles is because depending upon who you are and where you are and what you do is absolutely going to determine the types of indicators of CSEC that will appear to you. The protocols that you would develop in a school setting versus a community after school program are very different. The protocols that you're going to and the partnerships that you're going to need to build if you're a behavioral therapist versus say a juvenile justice professional are different. And so we're really trying to get you into that bit of knowledge that now you can actually act on. And that will span the whole world of prevention, how to prevent trafficking in your role, how to identify CSEC, how to help a child exit safely in that situation and in those moments, how to support the restoration and aftercare and reintegrative supports for survivors of CSEC, and even the reforms that you might want to be paying attention to and can speak into in your profession as well regarding this issue. So it is robust, but it can be all accomplished online and on your phone, on your laptop. We'll come back to kind of all of those ways that you can get it done. The whole program is about, Jessica, if you'll nod, 4 hours in length from start to finish. And you'll also get digital certifications and continuing education units in your profession or field. So we've packed it all the way in for you. So to unpack it a little bit more and do a bit of a demo, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica Samuel.
All right, thanks, Ashley. I do quickly just want to show everyone how to find it and register. I will go a bit quickly, but we are recording today so that you can revisit if needed. And this is just to make sure that you guys see the steps. So we're really proud to be able to make this training available and easy to get to and use. As Ashley said, it is mobile friendly as well, so you will be able to access it on the go. Let's see, Courtney or our training facilitator, I need to go ahead and share my screen if that's all right. Great. Thank you so much. All right, so little show and tell. The first thing that you're going to want to do is to find the training. I'm going to show you in case that you don't have a link right in front of you. You can actually head to learnwithjusticeu.com and you can find the CSEC Essential Knowledge series in the drop down from courses. And then you'll choose the state of North Carolina and you'll find the register button. So it's a pretty quick way to get there. You can also visit the link that should be on the materials that you have from today as well. And I'll show you the registration process just so that you guys are comfortable with that. If you're already a learner with JusticeU, we would encourage you to log in first. So you would just click that, log in, and then come back and refresh the page. But I'm going to do this as a new learner so that you can see a couple of different things here. So we'll fill in our information and there we go. I'm actually in California, way over here on the West Coast. And if you, we'll probably get NC CASA in this list in just a moment, but I'll go ahead and fill out some information here just so you can see that this is all on the same screen. You can use your email address as your username or choose a new one. Fill in a little bit of math there. And if you do have a coupon code from your organization, you can enter it here and you'll see that the cost will get taken care of for you. If you don't have a coupon code yet, then you'll just put your credit card information in here on the bottom. So just like that, you're in and ready to go, and we'll click register. And I want to just show you that process just so that you know that you're on the right track. A lot of times the registration process can, we want to make sure that that's easy for you. And this is what I really want to show you today is this link that appears in your sidebar with the name of the series. That's what I want you to notice is your home base once you're logged in. And what I mean by home base is if you ever get turned around, you can always click on this link and it will take you back here to the series menu page that has everything that you need to interact with the series. You've got lots of handy links under the quick links menu that you can explore. You have a technical support link there where we'll be in touch with you if you have any issues. But here's where you're going to want to go. This is going to align with what Ashley showed you for part 1. Here's your course to be able to earn that badge, part 2, and part 3. So it's really easy. We'll hop into part 2. And you'll see that you can interact with all of the content and get started right here. And I'll show you too some of this on-page navigation. So you'll really easily be able to move through the course. And like I said, if you're ever coming back to the series or you need to take a break, you can always come back to that series menu page and you can always hop back in, and you can see it's going to track your progress and really help you know exactly where you are. Each one of these courses will conclude with the exam where you can earn the badge. I wanted to show you in the short time that we have, this part 3, what Ashley was sharing, has a choose your role component. And this is just a really neat feature to allow some customized content depending on how you're interacting with children. So for example, we have this one for juvenile justice professionals, and each one of them has some specific information for that role to really help you bring that knowledge into exactly how you're interacting with children and how you can make improvements in all of the areas that we've talked about, and how that you can influence your community. And at the end of that, you'll have a chance to earn that final certification. The last thing that I wanted to show you, if I have just 2 more minutes, is that once you do have your badge, you're going to get that connected with credly.com. And this is just a really neat way to manage your digital credentials. So I'm going to show you that once you have your badge earned, and this is all in the how-to documentation for the course, you'll be able to get, oh, it logged me out. You'll be able to get your certificate as a PDF. I'll try to get that going and come back and show you guys at the end after we have some discussion. But we have instructions for that in the back of the course so that you'll be able to see that. And that's just a really neat feature to be able to have available. Let me see if it lets me do that here. Nope. Okay. Well, I will show you right at the end as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, I think, but hopefully that helps you guys get acclimated to what to expect and how to log in and how to manage all of that. We're just really excited to invite you into that learning opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. So we can just advance to the slide where it says, let's hear from the experts. And if you all have any questions regarding the what Jessica was just going through, please do put them in the chat. And we will go from there. All right, so let's hear from the experts. I'm really excited to introduce the next this next section. So what we've done here on this little quick training is we're showing you the team, the NC CASA, the Justice U, and the subject matter experts that work together to create this North Carolina specific product. So
Courtney, can you hear
yes.
me? Let me interrupt and get the same question. If they're asking about the coupon code. And so NC CASA has purchased a number of free membership badges for its members. So if you are a member of NC CASA, check in with, I don't know if we discuss who they check in with, but check in with either Courtney or myself, and we will check your membership, and you will be given the code in order for you to access the system. Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Robin. Great. So yeah, just email one of us and we'll get you set up. So we have our subject matter experts, and I'm asking you all to please turn your cameras on, and if you all can take a minute each to introduce yourselves. We'll go the order: Lala, then Miriam, then Kimberly, and then Dr. Laura.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lala Appleberry. I am a human trafficking consultant. For over a decade, I've worked with adolescent girls in particular, providing direct services, mentoring, case management, things of that nature to commercially sexually exploited girls and youth. And so I have lots of experience there. I also consult currently with the state on the Survivors Network, working with different agencies and different folks who are wanting to implement more survivor-led centered work and things like that. And so I've worked on a multitude of different teams and multidisciplinary teams with law enforcement, direct service staff, medical staff, educators, the whole gamut. So thank you all for having me. I'm so excited for this.
Hi, I'm Miriam Cobb. I'm founder and director at Empty Frames Initiative. We are a nonprofit dedicated to empowering youth as they transition out of state care. We've had the privilege of serving on the North Carolina Coalition Against Human Trafficking Board of Directors and have learned from several organizations there, as well as participating in conferences and trainings across the state and the US. And we are always looking to bring awareness to the intersection of foster care and human trafficking. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Kim Marino, and I am the Director of Program Enhancement and Evaluation for a national and international nonprofit called West Care. I worked for 15 years in juvenile justice in North Carolina doing direct service programming, and the past year have transitioned into a role where we are looking at enhancing all programs to be more aware of all aspects of working in the nonprofit sector, to include the sexual exploitation of children, and ensuring that we are more trauma-informed in our approach to do all of that. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Dr. Laura?
Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Harbison. I don't know if you can see me. I can't see myself on there. Okay, hi. I am a mental health provider. I am the owner and lead therapist of Creative Counseling and Learning Solutions. Our main office is in Albemarle, North Carolina, which is in Stanley County. However, we serve people that are from counties all around us that have complex trauma, including people that have experienced sex trafficking, whether they're minors or adults, and all of the other compound factors surrounding that. I also have been involved in helping to provide trainings across the United States about human trafficking, as well as complex trauma, the therapeutic implications, and the recommendations to be more complex trauma informed. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is a small portion of the larger subject matter expert team that we worked with to provide that content, that North Carolina specific content. And I think, as you can see, we have gotten the best of the best. So we're really excited. So we're going to have a brief conversation about CSEC and building a North Carolina response. So I prepared a couple of questions, and we're just going to have a very brief discussion. So the first question, next slide, please, is, are we reaching trafficked youth and children? So with all the anti-human trafficking outputs over the last several years in North Carolina, are we reaching, are we identifying, and are we helping trafficked youth and children? So if we are, if yes, then how have we been successful? If not, what do we need to do? What next steps do we need? So I'm going to start with Lala to answer that question.
Great, sure. So what I will say is we can do better. So whether or not it's being addressed, we can definitely do better. I think now that we have the mandate for schools to implement curriculum training and education, that we will start to more, not easily, but have more tools to be able to identify CSEC, commercially, it's a tongue twister for me, commercially sexually exploited youth in the schools, because a lot of that, I feel like the teachers, the guidance counselors, the social workers, all the adults in the schools will really have more firsthand knowledge of what's going on with the schools, with the kids in that system. And so I think that this training is in particular really, really important, because this is something that folks in the school systems can go through and start to be able to identify the kids in their schools, because they are there. They are there. We just are not identifying them properly and intervening in the ways that we should be able to.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Great. Dr. Laura, what would you say?
Yes, I perfectly agree. We can do better. However, I have seen a lot of progress over the past few years. This is an area that I've been working in for the past 6 years, and the progress has been very hope inspiring. However, we do have a lot of work yet to do. I also agree about the schools and educating the teachers and other frontline workers, but as well as juvenile justice, social services, and law enforcement. There's been a lot of times where I've worked with a victim of sex trafficking or labor trafficking, and I have been told that they had encountered people from various agencies and nobody had noticed. So we do need to do a better job at noticing and what to do when we do notice, or if we just have some uneasy feeling about what might be going on, who to report that to be able to investigate. So I'm very excited about the work we've already done, and I'm looking forward to continued collaboration through this project, as well as any other projects we can get started with here in North Carolina to do better.
Great, thank you. Miriam.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what's been said. I think that this panel kind of represents that there is a lot of good work being done, that there is a lot of hope and connection across our state. But when I speak with youth who have come out of the foster care system and I hear their stories, I have been able to see and hear a lot of gaps. And I think it's because of what you mentioned at the beginning, Courtney. We're talking about something that's really dark and heavy and overwhelming. And a lot of times the training we get on human trafficking focuses on the stories that we're willing to share. And these are some of the ones for commercially sexually exploited. Children. We don't want to talk about it as much. And so there's less awareness to the specific population within human trafficking. So I think there's room to grow, but we're doing a lot of good work right now. So,
thank you, Miriam. Kimberly, what would you say?
I first want to echo that there are some very legitimate, impactful interventions that are happening in North Carolina. There are some providers, especially CACs, that we are aware of that are doing great work. So there are efforts in place in certain areas that are great. I think there are a lot of areas where we need to grow. And I say we, meaning every intersection of anybody who works with youth in this state. I think the initial issue is how we identify the commercial sexual exploitation of children and human trafficking. I don't know that everyone that interacts with a youth in any setting really is educated equally, if that makes sense, in what it might look like. There are still a lot of people that are looking for the white truck or the white van and 7 or 8 immigrants in the back, and they fail to recognize that the majority of the youth that are being trafficked currently are still living in their homes most of the time. They're still showing up for school. They're still doing things that make it appear that they're not being trafficked, when in fact that's certainly not the case. Moreover, in order to address this appropriately, we need to recognize what barriers are in place, and we need to look at fear and minority populations and how they're affected. Families are torn apart when children report, when they disclose, and we have a system in place that has requirements, but those requirements are related to law enforcement, they're related to CPS, and most of the time, those two entities are entities that children fear being involved in their lives because of past experiences. So the intersectionality of working together with everyone, I think first just to clearly identify what it looks like would be helpful. And at some point, ideally in North Carolina, we enter into all spaces somebody that is neutral, that can step in and be an advocate for that child.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. And we've talked about that. Someone who is not part of the system, not representing the system being there. So I just wanted to lift up when you said families are torn apart when children disclose. And I think everybody on this call that's a survivor that works with children understands what that means, and especially so for those, as you said, those in minority communities, right? CPS, law enforcement are not their friends in general, right? No matter, so I just wanted to just lift that up. Excellent. Thank you, all of you, so much. So let's go on to the next question, please, Alexandra. So what would a statewide response to CSEC look like for North Carolina? So in other words, what would its essential components be? Services, values, partnerships. Be as specific as possible if you can. So we'll start, Kimberly, why don't we just start with you?
Sure. So I think anyone who's had experience working with someone who has been exploited or trafficked understands that our requirements as they stand today are that we contact systems, especially previously mentioned law enforcement, CPS, et cetera, to enter into the system. And having somebody who could step in and be that first contact with that youth or that child that is a neutral party, I believe personally in my experience, it would allow the child to feel validated and heard initially, and I think that's critical. This system that's being created with you, NC CASA, and Justice U is an excellent first step. It would be wonderful if it was required in all settings, not just offered, but required. We have a lot of systems in North Carolina that are working, excuse me, with youth that are being exploited, and we are missing that opportunity to save them. We've said this is heavy. It's not a light topic. We're talking about somebody's entire livelihood and mental health and well-being. Information and training and having it be required for anybody who interacts with youth, I believe would be a fantastic step. And you and I have spoken many times about some sort of mentorship program and finding some volunteers to step in and assist.
Okay, that's great. No, thank you. Thank you. Lala, I caught you on a stretch. What would you say? And I'm looking at the time, so let's, we only have a few more minutes, so I want to pack this in.
Thought about this, okay? I thought about this question. I really believe that we need a multidisciplinary team that has a dedicated coordinator that can provide like real-time assistance. So when things are happening, they can call this coordinator and be like, this is the case, this is what's happening, where can you refer, where can you connect me to? I think the multidisciplinary team needs to have folks, number one, needs to have a survivor at the table, needs to have DSS or CPS representatives, law enforcement, mental health experts. And these people need to also be folks that have leverage and authority in the agency that they are working with so that they're able to make some of these changes and do the things that we're talking about. Some of the things that I would say that this team would be tasked with would be things like creating screening tools, creating a toolkit for best responses based on the agency that the kids are coming from, recommending protocols, and just doing overall legislation advocacy work. And I think that it needs to be, I think the coordinator needs to be a paid person that can focus and dedicate this.
So you mean like a statewide MD team and one coordinator, something like that? Okay, yes, exactly. That's one model. Okay, thank you, Lala. Dr. Laura, what would you say? What would a statewide response to CSEC look like for North Carolina?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I love these ideas. Secondly, the MDT teams that I have been a part of have been county specific, and taking those county specific ideas and bringing it to a state level sounds exactly like what the two women that were just speaking described. So I think, yes, we do need something that would not only require trainings, but also have a vetting process to make sure that the programs that are out there and are existing are providing the appropriate type of care, because there's a lot of really well-intended people and programs that are making some major mistakes, and to be able to help them to get up to par to where they need to be to provide the services. I think something needs to be in place with that as well.
Yeah.
That's part of what I've been trying to do with some of the trainings, but maybe on a statewide level to have a set criteria to vet the programs, to help them to be the best they can be, to make sure the services are optimal.
Thank you. And Dr. Laura and I have spoken before, and she has mentioned that she has had to clean up some pretty horrible practices, horrendous practices on children with, I guess, well-meaning people. So the vetting process, that would have to be in statute. So I am making this list, y'all. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Miriam, what would you add?
Yeah, I think everything that's been said, for sure. I think when we're talking about it, we're like, this is what we should do, and we have to acknowledge that it's going to be kind of complicated, and just be prepared for that. And it's going to require a lot of communication, especially when we use the phrase statewide. Like, this is going to require a lot of effort and communication on everyone's part. And yeah, I think everything that you said at the beginning, the list of gaps, that's reversing those into our strengths is going to be what's required to have a statewide response. We're going to need to have the data. We're going to need to have the communication. We're going to need to have the trainings. So
love it.
Complicated.
Love it. Reversing the gaps into strengths. That's a great line. Thank you. So let's go on to the next slide. So how then does this essential knowledge training, and some of you have kind of already answered this, how does this training move us one step closer to a statewide response, to our dream response that we just mentioned? And Miriam, I'll just kick it back to you.
Yeah, my favorite part of this training is that it's creating a shared language so that when we get the communication system really going, we're all talking about the same thing. We're all working towards the same thing. We're all aware of the same needs. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's my favorite part. I think it lays the foundation for a successful response to have the same ideas. Yeah.
Great. Lala?
Yeah, I want to say, Miriam, exactly, that's one of the things I was going to say. You know, it also, I think that this training, and by no means am I like the best expert or whatever, but when I went to this training, I was thoroughly impressed. I've been working in this field for a very long time with this very specific population, and it is a very good solid base. What I think needs to happen or does not need to happen is another training, someone's creating another training. I think that we can all really operate from this very good base training and grow from there and create maybe part twos or whatever it is. But I do think that just like Miriam said, that this training is very thorough, it's very comprehensive, and it does exactly what it needs to do. And I think we can all use it.
Thank you. That's awesome. I'm so happy. Kimberly?
I'm excited that this is happening now. Many of the changes that we're looking for, we all know are going to take, you know, a decade, if not longer. And that's very discouraging at times, but this training is available today. Everyone on this call can take it tonight and be more informed. And I think it's going to create a network that will get the ball rolling.
Love it. Dr. Laura?
Yes. Well, first of all, I do want to say that having everybody at the table that is taking part of this training is a huge step, because there's professionals from all different fields, and we need to know who our handoff people are. So understanding like, okay, well, here's my lane, and this is the next lane to be able to provide services that are needed for this person. Who's my handoff person? And having this training and having the people engaged in this model, I feel like, yes, it's the same language. Yes, it's the same training, that we're all learning the same things, and we will learn about each other. That's the part that I'm hoping will be following steps, because this doesn't happen with just one person or one field. This is that village coming around each individual that is suffering. And we are making a monumental step by having this training and having the people at this table today. So I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
And it almost sounds like what I'm hearing is we have the tools, we have it, but we just need to leverage them wisely, right? Staying, identifying lanes, knowing the next, the points of contact, communication, no duplication of efforts. These are all really, really great programmatic points. I really appreciate that. So the next slide, and we can open this up for questions. Yes, Virginia, we like that village approach. What are our next steps? Register for the training is one, but what are our next steps? We'd like to hear from the audience, and certainly Justice U team, if you want to share a few things, definitely try to have a conversation as we kind of wind down the last few minutes. So
I do want to lift up some things that, especially what Brittany has put in the chat, because I don't think that was mentioned, right, about as a way to get people on Justice U is the continuing education unit, because it is set up for every profession that have, interacts with kids to get that. And those professions have licensures that the CEUs help with that. So that's really, really, really important. Thank you, Brittany, for lifting that up. The other piece I'm really curious about is when we talk about this statewide response, is where, for the folks who are in North Carolina, who would be the best fit to try to get this to happen? The thing that I keep hearing from the group, and especially Dr. Laura, that was amazing about the handoff and all of that, and particularly staying in our lanes, and Miriam understanding from working with NC CASA how complicated it is for something similar, right? Is that where would this land? Because the one thing that I heard Kimberly say is that a lot of our survivors are not comfortable with government, right? And so knowing the makeup of where we are statewide in North Carolina, where do y'all think this should land? And that is part of our next steps. Who should be doing this side of coordination, or would have the wherewithal and the connections to be able to get this done?
Is that a rhetorical? I mean, I think that's a really great point, Robin. And I'm sitting here thinking about that as well. And if it's not a rhetorical question, I have an idea. I have a suggestion.
No, it's not rhetorical. And I'm interested not only hearing, the folks in North Carolina, but I'm also interested because Ashley and Jessica do, national work, international work. And so if they had time to lean into that, I know we only have 3 minutes, but this would be very helpful to us in the movement.
Well, and Lala, obviously, I think you've got an idea too. I would just say from my perspective, the best is when it doesn't sit in just one person's or one role or one agency's bucket, because what happens is it can get some excitement and momentum. And then because government agencies, just the natural turnover, the political turnover, if it's not right out of the gate set up as a consortium of agencies, and maybe they pass the baton to each other to be the driver, at different points in time. But that really has to happen so that funding remains stable, so that that it doesn't get turned off or on simmer when it's not the priority of whatever the new director is, or that particular administration. And then also it really needs to be someone who is, that driver has to be someone who is a third party neutral in most cases, or at least is capable of acting in that space, and collaborator. So where we see those models break apart is if someone's at the helm who starts to drive things towards themselves, and instead of serving as a conduit to all of the many folks across the state who need to be activated. So that would be my suggestion. And there are some models to take a look at, which we'll be happy to explore soon. Lala?
No, that was beautifully said, Ashley. I mean, you so eloquently put my thoughts into words. And so exactly what you just said. I think especially, I just want to elaborate the point you said about the person, the driver being a person that is collaborative. I also want to add that I really believe that the driver, if possible, would be a survivor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
certainly.
I think
Absolutely.
the one other thing I would add to that discussion maybe that I like this training to support the model of kind of centralized and through, but also grassroots and up.
Mm-hmm.
I think we really do need to approach it in both streams, if you will, to be successful. And I think what the training should enable, this is why I put in the chat, I think it's a great model to take it as groups and then add discussion and activation at a hyper local level, because I think as you start to find that momentum at a grassroots level, and then you start to enable some of the pieces that we're talking about at a more centralized kind of top down level, I think you have a lot of good success with that. So then it's all the drivers, you know, kind of pushing toward one goal instead of one trying to convince the other. So hopefully the training is an enabler for that model as well.
Thank you. I wish we had more time. I want to stay true to our time. Robin, will you close us out?
Oh, yes, thank you. You know I want to anyway. But because, you know, it's been my experience, and I've been in this work for a long time around human trafficking and coming from sexual violence, is that there have been many attempts made in this state to try to bring us together. And I think that the best way to do that, and I think we've mentioned is someone from the outside, right? So, I mean, you hear me say this all the time, that a prophet's not known in their own homeland. And a lot of times it is best to have someone outside of your state who is very knowledgeable around these issues. And that's why we engage with, you know, Justice U and the folks from AFRJ. And, you know, they do this work across the country through their Engage Together. And I really think that we really need to have in North Carolina them come in. You heard Ashley, you heard Jessica, you saw them in May at our conference to be like the arbiter around this, where they can check in with us to make sure that we said this is a lane I'm in, right? This is what I bring to this collaborative effort. And making sure that they are checking with us to ensure we stay in those lanes once we made these agreements and practices. You know, I really believe that this piece around Justice U, I love what Miriam said, I love what Kim gets us there, gets us started to have the conversation. That's why we invested, thanks to the funding from the Governor's Crime Commission, in this. I mean, we said to Ashley, look, we got this extra money. Can we do it? We've been wanting to work with them for years because we know the brilliance that they have. We know that they do this work across the country. We know they are knowledgeable internationally and nationally around this work. And so the other piece that they bring is that Brittany's right here in North Carolina. She's been through the child welfare system. She understands that vital piece that needs to be connected in this work. And I truly believe if we have the wherewithal, we have the commitment, that we can do this. And it starts with these people on the call. So stay tuned. We are always looking for ways that we can bring these folks back and to help us to move forward in making sure children are protected and cared for in this state. So thank y'all for being on this call. I'm energized.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Take care, everyone.